this fake cheesy amateur piano is going to be turned into this. And I want to show you that you could do this too, because surprisingly, it's easy. Like, I seriously suck at playing the piano.
We suck again!
So if I can do this, you can 100% achieve a better piano sound too. There is a method to the madness, so let's work our way through this, starting with the first tip. These chords look a bit thin and weak. If you're penciling in your MIDI like I do, think about what it would look like if you were really playing the piano with both hands. You can have your left hand playing the bass notes or the root note of each chord in that progression, and your right hand could be playing a triad, the actual chord. This will thicken up the sound of your chords, make them sound more realistic and musical. In this specific example, you could see I doubled the root note over 2 octaves. You could also just choose to do 1 octave if that sounds better. But you really have options here. You could also play something like the root and the 5th. That can sound awesome too. Try it out, go with what sounds best. If your pianos do sound super cheesy, this next tip might be the solution for you. We're going to talk about chord inversions. It's one of the easiest and best ways to make your chords sound more professional. Do you see in this example how the chords are far apart from each other? Imagine if your hand was actually trying to play this, how far it would have to move. Now, it's possible, but we could make it easier for our hand to play by inverting some of the notes in these chords. This will also help because the pitch is not going to have to jump so far from the first chord to the second. To do a chord inversion, you're going to experiment by taking any of these notes in the chord and bumping them up or down an octave. It's technically playing the same chord, but notice the voicing between these two chords looks closer together. This is what chord inversions can do. It not only makes it easier because now imagine my hand doesn't have to move as far to play these notes from chord to chord, but by inverting these notes, it's also going to give you a different feeling and emotion in the sound of this progression, which is really cool. All right, let's move on to the next tip. In this specific example, you notice I'm using the Noir piano from Contact. And it's okay if you don't have this one because technically you could use any piano to achieve the same benefits from this next technique. With that being said though, let me know in the comments, which piano do you use? Are you using the same one as me? Are you a Keyscape person, Nexus, something like that? Let me know in the comments which piano you do like to use. All right, so because I penciled these MIDI notes in, it's going to sound extremely fake, robotic, and programmed. To solve this, we're gonna need to humanize the piano. This basically means creating the imperfections that would exist if someone played the piano in real time. Their timing would be slightly off, it's not quantized on the grid, the finger pressure on each key would be slightly different, but think about what happens when you program your MIDI notes. It's the complete opposite. Everything is perfect, and this sounds unrealistic. So there are 3 ways we can humanize this piano. The first is using some built-in features that come with your DAW. The second way would be to do it manually, and the third way would be a hybrid of both, which is what we're going to do in this example. I think that's the best option. Obviously, I'm in Ableton here, but don't panic. Logic does have a quantize option, so does FL Studio, so you can take advantage of those and sort of mirror what I'm doing here. For Ableton, I'm going to load up the quantize 16 setting in the groove pool. From here, I can adjust how much I want the timing of the notes and the velocity to vary. Think of velocity as that pressure, how hard you're pressing the keys. Then I can add a bit of randomness to this so it's not equally affecting each note. Think about it, that would defeat the purpose of what we're trying to do here. I want those subtle variations between the timing of each note and the pressure of each note. So the randomization really helps in this case. After applying it, I'm going to zoom in here and you're going to notice the timing is slightly off from note to note and the velocity or volume of each note is slightly off. This is what it would look like if I were able to play it in live. Now you could use this feature to start, but what I would recommend is still do another sweep through and adjust things manually. You might want to make further adjustments to the timing, or you may want certain notes in each chord to be louder and emphasized. Just don't be afraid to tweak things here. All right, so we've reached the point where it's time to process and layer this piano to make it sound badass. To start, you're gonna hit the like button on this video. You can start by doing a bit of EQ first. Usually you want to look to take out some of the extreme lows. Some of the lower mid to mid frequencies can get a bit muddy as well. You could then also listen and notice if there are any harsh, shrill, or resonant frequencies. Think of these as those piercing sharp frequencies. You'll notice I've put a compressor in the middle of this chain. This always sounds nice because it really brings out the sustain on these longer chords, these longer notes. You're also going to notice that these EQs occur before and after the compression. So I did clean up early but I also had to clean up after the compressor with a little bit of the dynamic EQ in Pro Q. And I also used this EQ8 to further color and sculpt my piano after the compression. Think of this as sound design. Don't be afraid to use multiple EQs when it comes to sound design. Okay, the piano is sounding solid, but I don't want to stop here. The beauty of production is sometimes we don't need to be realistic. We can layer this piano, make it larger than life, fill more frequency, make it more interesting, and add that ear candy that's going to make it stand out. Whether we realize it or not, this is what we hear in most modern productions. So let me show you what I stacked on top of the original piano. This second layer is a Wurlitzer preset from the Korg M1. Honestly, it's just a random preset that I chose. This isn't like a go-to for me. My main approach is to usually just look for an organ or a keyboard type layer that will complement the original piano. Because they sound different, I found it worked well with the original one. I also like that this preset was mono, where the original piano is stereo. Because they're spaced differently, it does create some separation where I get value out of each and they're not masking each other as much. The next layer is this Nexus piano that I just drowned out with reverb. So you might be asking, why not put the reverb on the original piano? Now, sometimes that can work, but another option you can try is just having a layer dedicated for reverb. This gives me far more control. I can pitch this piano layer drowned in reverb to a different octave. I can also process this different from the original piano, and just the fact that it could be a completely different sounding reverb piano adds more interest to my song and the overall soundscape. These differences are what makes it sound unique. Finally, I filled out the high end of the spectrum with this pretty basic Nexus piano. I did put some reverb and OTT on it to make it sound large, but really this is the piano layer responsible for keeping the group bright. Can we just stop and appreciate how much better this sounds than the original? If you liked this video, you're gonna seriously love this next one on drums. It's the same concept where we turn these pretty basic cheesy drums into thick pro sounding drums. So go tap the box on the screen right now and I'll meet you over in that video.